Today we are going to be talking about rounding in decimals. And basically, rounding in decimals is pretty much the same thing as rounding without decimals. So let me just show you. Okay, so this number is 6 and 358 thousandths, right? So this is the ones. Okay, this is the tenths, right? This is the decimal. So this number is the ones place. This is the tenths, this is the hundredths, and this is the thousandths, okay? So that's different than the tens, hundreds, and thousands over here. These ones have a th at the end, and they are after the decimal. So, right now, let's why don't we round to all of the digits? Well, we wouldn't round to the thousandths because it would just be this. There would have to be a number over here that we would round. So we can round to the ones, the tenths, and the hundredths. So first, let's round to the ones. So the number one thing to know when you're rounding, okay, is basically just place value. You need to know, for rounding to the ones, you need to know where the ones is. So right here, we're rounding to the ones. Now, rounding to the ones is exactly the same as saying rounding to the whole number. If you're rounding to the nearest whole number, that is the same, or estimating, using the nearest whole number, that you're going to end up rounding, and that is the same as rounding to the ones. So if you ever hear rounding to the nearest whole number, it just means rounding to the ones. So I always underline the place value that I'm rounding to, and then I hop one place value to the right. And if that place value is if that digit is from 0 to 4, it stays the same. Okay, this number will stay the same. Okay, so it stays the same, and 5 through 9, we plus 1. So since this is a 3, that means that this 6 stays the same. And since we're doing it to the nearest whole number, you can do this in decimals too, but every number after this just turns into a 0. But 6 and 0 thousandths is actually exactly the same as just 6, right? You don't even need to put the decimal and 3 zeros, but it's just the same as 6, right? So this one, since 3 is in the tenths and 3 is in the 0 to 4, that means that the 6 stays the same. It rounds down back to 6. Okay? So now, let's round to the tenths. So the 3 is in the tenths, so I'm going to underline the 3 in the tenths. Then I'm going to hop 1 over to the right, to the hundredths. Okay? And it is a 5, so 5 through 9, we're going to add 1. So then any number to the left of where you're rounding doesn't change. This still stays the 6. Okay? And then decimal stays obviously in the same place. And now I'm turning this 4. Okay? I'm turning the 3 into a 4 because there's a 5 in the place value to the right of it. And then I can add these zeros if I would like, or I can just keep it as 6 and 4 tenths, right? So it doesn't matter. 6 and 400 thousandths is the same as 6 and 4 tenths. I could keep adding zeros forever, and it doesn't change the value. So really, when you're rounding to the nearest tenth, this is the answer that they're looking for. 6 4/10. Okay? Now, if you're rounding whole numbers, obviously you have to include the zeros, right? Because the zeros in whole numbers clearly change the value of them. But zeros after the decimal place, as long as there's no whole numbers to the right of them, don't change the value. All right, so we did it to the ones. We rounded to the tenths. Now let's round to the hundredths. So the hundredths is here. I'm going to underline it, hop over one to the right, one digit to the right, and then we see that the 8 is between 5 and 9. We add 1. So every digit to the left stays the same. Decimal stays the same. So it is, and the 5 goes up 1. So it becomes the 6. I could draw a 0 here. Doesn't matter. And it becomes 6 36 hundredths, rounded to the hundredths. Okay, so basically rounding after the decimal is pretty much exactly the same as rounding whole numbers. The only real difference is you don't need to add the zeros afterwards. So it's, as long as you know how to round whole numbers, it's pretty easy to round the decimals.